in the theater in Southern California. It's the only showing for this 25th anniversary. Thank you very much for being here, and let's do the Q&A at the end. Here's Ian, as you saw. Welcome our guest, Mr. Ian MacKaye.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. Sorry I can't be there in person.
Your time is valued. Thank you. Good evening, good evening, good night. Hello. I guess my question is, I'm excited for this screening of The Instrument. How do you feel with this being the 25th anniversary?
I have to say, I don't really give a fuck about anniversaries at all. That's just my way. I just do my work. I really appreciate I actually didn't even think about the fact that it was the 25th anniversary. Somebody else actually brought it to my attention, and I was like, that's cool. I'm glad,
I hope it wasn't me.
Well, it was other people, but it was, I think mostly, I don't really think we need to seize upon years it was 0 or years it was 5 to appreciate things. I think we could celebrate things every day. So it's interesting that it's been 25 years, but time is elusive. And, all I think about is, I just do my work. And then I look up and it's another day farther down the road. I do think one thing I can say about this film is that when we were making it, I was really interested in showing a lot of the audience. And this was one of the reasons I was so interested in showing the audience was because I was so fascinated by movies like Monterey Pop or Woodstock or Festival or Jazz on a Summer's Day, all of which have a lot of footage of the audiences, and seeing the way time affects the way people look in the past, that you can see a commonality, but they're obviously of a different era. I just thought that was really important. So the fact that it's actually a quarter of a century later, and you're seeing people who are essentially us, but in a different context, I think that's pretty cool. So I'm very happy about that. But in terms of it being an anniversary, whatever. I'm just glad you all came to see the movie. It's better in the theater.
Woo! Thank you. I'm glad I get to watch the movie and talk to you. Thank you.
Well, all right.
What's going on, Ian? How you doing?
Oh, well, thank you.
Pick a number between 1 and 4.
Okay. I did.
Tell me the number.
Tell you the number? Are you kidding?
Yeah. Tell me the number.
All right. How about 3?
3. Ooh, this is a question from my friend Eli. What are some of your most memorable tour memories or memories from the recording studio with Fugazi?
That's a rather wide. You pick a number between 1 and 4, and I'll try to. That's too fucking wide. How about?
Okay.
I'll tell you. Let me think about a tour story. Well, give me some. Do you want a funny story or a horrific story? What do you want?
Well, everyone knows the story with the ice cream and the neo-Nazi. I'm curious about more. What were some of the best experiences you guys had on the road? What were some places you guys went and you thought it was going to be, a shit show, but it ended up being a really good time?
Let me think about it for 1 second. Because there's definitely been a lot of experiences like that where we've gone to. Actually, I can tell you that when we first toured, in 1993, January 93, I went with L7 and Nirvana and Red Hot Chili Peppers and Maxi Priest down to Brazil. I was friends with L7 and they asked me if I would help roadie. So I had this really insane experience in Brazil. They were playing stadiums, and they played Rio and they played Sao Paulo. And but I was just a roadie on that trip, so I was just in the shuttle bus going to the stadium and back to the hotel, and it was very much a closed circuit. Shortly after that, we were contacted by a guy named Marcos Baffa, who's from a town called Belo Horizonte, which is a little farther north. And as he referred to it, as a small city of 4 million. Brazil is insane. It's a huge country. And so he wants to play the first ever Brazilian independent music festival. And we were a little bit, we were interested. We had to go down there, but I said to him, if we come all the way to Brazil, we don't want to play just one show. And then he said, oh, so do you want to play Rio and Sao Paulo as well? Assuming that would be where we want to play. Now, I'm from Washington, D.C., and when if people were coming from another country to play the United States, Rio and Sao Paulo is like New York, L.A. So it's not Washington. So we're very sensitive about playing other towns. Fredericton in Canada. We played a place called the New Maryland Community Center, and it was maybe 15 miles outside of this town. And we got there, and it had not even occurred to me to ask if there was a stage. There was no stage. So we're like, oh shit! Well, it's on now. So we drove back into town to have dinner. We were just driving in a minivan. We had dinner, and then we were driving back to this club, and there was these two kids hitchhiking on the side of the road. And I could tell they were kind of punk kids. So I stopped, and we picked them up, and they jumped in the van with us. And they said, are you going to the show? We said, yeah. And they were like, oh, man, do you think they're going to show up? And I said, I think there's a pretty good chance they're going to show up. And the kids were like, no way. But then one of the two kids, he clocked it. And he freaked out. But it was really, we drove all the way. One kid was this whole time like, I don't think they're going to be there. I go, I think they're going to be there. Anyway, that was a really amazing experience. Anyway, thanks for the question.
Thank you so much for the time. Excited to see you.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, I'm very excited for this night, and thank you so much. Oh my goodness, I did see you in Los Angeles back in the days for $5, and it was awesome. I was curious how just being a teenager and being, most teenagers are curious about drugs and alcohol. Like, what made you make the decision to stay away from that? I mean, because that's, just being curious and even,
Yeah. I think I was very curious about life, and I felt like even from the get-go, I found people who were just getting fucked up to be very incurious, because what they were interested in was like encasing themselves in another experience, like some other weird, like closed experience, where I was curious and wanted to feel it all. So I was a huge Jimi Hendrix fan as a kid, and in 1974 and 75, I would meet people who saw Hendrix, and pretty much to every person I spoke with about it, none of them could remember the show because they said they were too high. They were too fucked up. And I was like, he's only been dead for 4 years. Like, I can't believe you don't remember it. And I thought to myself, I don't want to like forget. Like, while I'm here, I want to be present 100%. This is actually my whole, like, I never was really curious about drugs. I think also you have to remember that I was growing up in an environment, which was at that time called society, but an environment where everybody was getting fucked up. Everybody. And I remembered, like, when I was I guess I was 12, and my father had a fellowship at Stanford University. So I spent 7th grade living in Palo Alto, California. My family moved out there for 1 year. And when I came back, my friends, the kids I was running with, almost all of them had gotten into getting high and drinking. And I missed whatever that transition was. I wasn't there for it, but what I was present for was seeing the effect on their curiosity about life. Because all they were thinking about was getting high and partying. And I kept thinking, as far as I could tell, every adult in the face of the earth just drinks or gets high for the rest of their lives. So why are kids take advantage of being a kid and don't do that? It just never was interesting to me. And frankly, it seemed like it was a pretty big. It was like a lot of hassle and kids were stealing stuff, and then, and not that, everyone was stealing shit, but, there was just a lot of, actually, poor judgment. And then by the time high school came along, and sexuality, people were developing their sexuality, I saw alcohol, especially, as something that was really problematic for a lot of people. And I thought, who wants a part of that? Also, let's think about who's really benefiting from alcohol. It's not the people who are drinking, it's the fucking companies. And they're making a lot of money on other people's insecurities. So, so I think for me it's been very clear.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think more and more people are starting to wake up that when you're actually starting to be sober, you see the world in a different light, you can actually process your emotions. And what you said, be present. And I think that's the key, because when you say Jimi Hendrix, and even watching you live and everybody, just being the present and seeing you guys live, and just, it's like almost like the ethers are coming through you, and the music, it's just a vibration, and like the feeling is just ethereal, and just, and not to remember that, like, or not to feel that, feel it through your body, and it's beautiful and amazing. So thank you for being such an inspiration in my life, and the music that you create, and everybody here, this is a sold out, like, I have one ticket here, so if there's any single hotties, I'm 47 years old, I live in Yucca Valley, and I'm a homeowner with a 12-year-old pit, and he's Mr. Pickles. And I'm very healthy mentally, spiritually, and physically. Thank you very much. Sorry for saying that, but I'm tired of waiting around. Come on, guys.
All right, nice to see you.
Ian, are you planning on starting a new dating app, or what it sounds like?
Apparently. Hi.
Hi, Ian. I don't know how to follow that up. Gush a little bit. Thank you for your influence on the scene, on kids my age growing up, on music, and young, aspiring musicians. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you have done. Start there.
On behalf of music, you're welcome.
We can't thank you enough on behalf of fans, musicians alike. Thank you. Anyway, having said that, this is as close as I'll ever get to see you live. Is to
maybe.
Did you hear that? Okay, I'm gonna text you my little DM later. You can tell me when you're gonna slide into my text. Okay. Anyway, having said that, my question to you, Ian, thank you so much. Can you share with us any musical regrets?
I don't think so. What does that mean?
I'm
Give me an example.
Okay, you're such an icon, having had your hand involved in lots of starts, projects that have come up. I'm not going to drop names. I'm not even a wealth of knowledge that a lot of people probably here are. I'm nervous talking to you. You have that much influence on what I've listened to. So I wonder, have you ever run across a time in your life that you care to share where you thought, gosh, I really missed the mark on that, or I wish I would have done it a little differently, I wish I hadn't done that, I wish I had? Any kind of musical regret?
I can't. First off, I don't really have any regrets in my life. I just don't really think like that. I mean, there was one time where maybe when I was around 35 years old, some friends brought their 4-year-old daughter over, and we were having a great time, and then I had a longboard, a skateboard, and she's like, oh, I want to ride on that. So we went down to this very, 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 very gentle hill, and we both stood on the board, and then it picked up too much speed, and we ended up crashing, and she ended up having to go to the hospital, and then Child Protective Services were called, and then I had to be interviewed by a cop, and he kept saying, what were you thinking? And I said, I just was not accustomed to being fully responsible for the well-being of a child. This didn't occur to me that this could happen, and I feel terrible. So that's about it for regrets. I don't have a lot of regrets.
Did you happen to write a song about it?
No.
Okay.
But to answer your question, I don't really have musical regrets. I can say that I've had experiences where I'm like, okay, that's a little bit of a learning lesson, or a lesson to be learned. For instance, I was in the band Embrace, which was a band from 1985 to 86. We played about 11 shows. And all four of us were very good friends, and we all were desperate to be in a band. But the three of them had already been in a band together and had already broken up. And so it was almost like what was going to happen literally had already happened. So we just could not. That band was just almost faded from the first time we played, and it just ended. And I came out of that experience feeling like, okay, like what was my misstep there? And the misstep, I think, was that I thought about that what I posed the question was, what I thought was, I want to be in a band. And that's not really what I wanted. What I wanted was to play music. So when I met, shortly thereafter, Joe Lally, I had known him from around the scene, but was at my house, the Discord house. He had been rooting for this band Beefeater, and he and I were talking, and we got to talk about music, and he was a nice guy. And at some point, I said to Joe, hey, do you want to play music with me? I'm not forming a band, do you want to play music? And he said, yes. So then he and I started playing music together. And then this guy, Colin Sears, who used to be in a band called Dag Nasty, had just broken up. So he was a friend of mine. I said, hey, Colin, Joe and I are playing music together. Do you want to play music with us? We're not forming a band. And he said, sure. So then we played for maybe 4 months. Then Colin went back to Dag Nasty, and Brendan Canty, who was at the time practicing another band in my basement, I said, hey, do you want to sit in with us? We're not forming a band. Do you want to play music with me? Anyway, you get the point. The point was that once I phrased the equation correctly, once I thought about it like what I really wanted, then I found the people to play with. Because so I can't say it's a regret. Embrace is not a regret, but it was a fucking lesson.
That's the best answer I could have asked for. Ian, thank you for your time.
Nice to see you.
Hi Ian, thank you for your time and doing this for us today. I was wondering if there was any records that you've been really loving lately or finding inspirational, either new or maybe something you're revisiting.
I mean, recently you mean, or this? I mean,
Recently, yeah. Like, what do you like to listen to these days?
Well, I've been in the studio with Black Eyes, this band Black Eyes. They're a band that just put some records out in the early 2000s, and then they broke up, and then almost 20 years later, they decided to get back together, and they're really interesting people, and they're very connected to each other. It's not really a commercial. They're not thinking like, oh, we're gonna go collect our reward. There was something that happened with them chemically when they played together, and so my head has been pretty well deep into that for the last few weeks. Very, very, very powerful music. I did go see Jesus Lizard on Saturday night, and they were great, and their new album sounds really great. I think that came out really nicely. But I also I listened to. The other day I was thinking about Fela Kuti again, and I started listening to some Fela Kuti stuff. There's a song called He Misrode, which I think is a really powerful song. So I'm constantly cycling through different forms of music and listening to, I just listen to stuff, not as much as I'd like to, I think. One reason is I haven't had a car in 4 years, so I just ride my bike to Discord and back, which is like maybe an hour and a half. 40 minutes in each direction, 45 minutes in each direction. But the thing which I love, the problem is that if you don't have a car, you don't have a car stereo. And that, in some ways, is the place where I listen to music the most. So more recently, I've just been listening to the sounds of the streets, which is also pleasant.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Hey, Ian.
Why is your phone up?
I'm recording it.
Man, this is getting fucking meta. All right.
But
Documentation's off.
you hinted at this, but do you still get the itch to play live shows?
I didn't hint. But do I? Oh, yes. It wasn't a hint. She just said, I'll never get to see you live. I'm like, I don't fucking know that. Who knows? Do I think about it? I do think about playing shows, and not just with Fugazi, but in general, performing. I do, obviously, like even at this moment, even though I'm sitting in my basement in Washington, D.C., and you all are sitting in this theater, this is, to some degree, I'm performing, right? Like, this is not the way I would be being. Like, when you speak to a crowd of people, you want to communicate to everybody, but also you want to, there's a part of what is inside of me, at least, that to communicate ideas. My brain is working really fast with a lot of adrenaline. This is a performance in a way. It doesn't mean it's not real. It's fucking real. But I'm performing. I'm working right now, and I love this. I like talking to the people. I wish I could be in the room with you guys. It'd be very nice. Playing shows has become very complicated for me. And I think it has to do partially with the way I'm not a fan of the music industry per se. And I find it weird that that even in the punk-ish underground world that there's the machinery of the industry is so in place, like agents and booking agents and managers and publicists. It's like all the structural stuff that was the thing that, from my point of view as a punk, was like the anathema. Like that was the thing that was wrong. That it should be, the people should decide. The bands should be talking to the people, that book the clubs or the venues, and it should be. We should trust each other. We don't need to sell our music. We need to play it. And so I think that's a little daunting for me. But it's also weird because if I play a show, like if I was to pick up a banjo and then do a show, if I announce it, some website is going to pick up on it, and then someday I'm going to have however many people coming to see my new gig. I can't. It's just weird. It's like it makes, and I'm not complaining. It's just a weird reality that I have that I can't. There's no room to grow, if you understand. Like I can't. It's immediately people. It's like going to be juxtaposed against other things that I've done. That's all right. I have plenty of work that I love to do and I will do, but I'm hoping, of course, well, let me say this. I've been thinking about this a lot. I've often said that my favorite genre of music is music made by people who don't have a choice in the matter. Currently, I feel like I have a choice. That doesn't mean I always will have a choice. At some point, these songs have to be written and these songs have to be played. When that is, I don't know, but we'll find out.
Thanks, Ian.
Hello, Ian. So happy to have you here, and so happy to be seeing this movie. But a little bit upset that we're not going to get to see everything that was really recorded for this. I know that there was a lot of stuff that had to get edited out. Is there anything that you wish kind of would have made it into the film that got cut out, or are we ever going to get to see kind of an extended version of everything that was recorded over those 10 plus years that you guys were making this film?
I don't know. I mean, I have all the footage in the archives. I don't study it a lot. I mean, there are some things that are pretty cool. Like we have, like the studio stuff I find really interesting. We have hours and hours of it. Like we actually, Jem Cohen, the director, and somebody I went to high school with, I've known him forever. One thing that happened, when he was in the studio, he just ran like an audio recorder. And there's probably, I think, 8 to 10 hours just raw of us working in the studio, talking in the control room, going through a version. It's really, I find that, I love listening to that stuff. But, I'm a kind of a Beatles person too. And the Beatles, when they did the Get Back sessions, they record, I spent 1 year driving around. I listened to, I think, 50 hours of the Beatles talking in the studio and shit. And I'm so interested in process. So that kind of stuff really does interest me. In terms of footage, things that ended up in the movie. I can't really remember anything that we cut out that I really wish was in there. There's actually a couple other glue mans that were pretty epic, but the one that's in the movie is also maybe more epic. I don't know. There was one scene that unfortunately it was such an epic moment for the band. We played a show in Olympia at the Capitol Theater, and these white power skinhead guys showed up, and they were just there to make a point. They were, and they were in the front and zig heiling and just being insane. And so, of course, we're not going to play music while that's going on. So finally, I was like, all right, there's maybe 10 or 15 of them. I said, all right, we're good. I think it's time. You guys have made your point, and now it's time for you to leave, and I'm going to give you your money back. So let's go to the lobby. So I jumped off the stage, and I led these 15 skinhead dudes up the aisle, and the whole room was chanting, out, 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 out. And there's footage of it from the balcony, but it's just so dark you can't really see it. But I remember we got to the lobby, and I walked to the ticket booth, and I said to the person there, I said, give me all the $5 bills you have. I got to give these guys their money back. And I just sat there giving each one of these guys their $5 back. And they're going like, way to support the First Amendment. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. And I remember right at that moment, there was a friend of mine from high school who was not a punk, but she was living in Olympia. And she walked into the theater at that very moment. And she was 8.5 months pregnant. And she was completely baffled by why, A, I was on stage, B, why I was handing out $5 bills to these terrifying looking skinhead guys. I wish there was footage of that. That would have been a good fucking scene.
I would have loved to seen it, and I hope we get to hear those 8 or 10 hours of you guys just talking in the studio. That would be great too. Thank you so much for your time again, Ian. Have a good night.
Thanks for your question.
Hi, Ian.
Hey, man.
Maybe inflammatory, but now that Albini's gone, do you have anything you haven't shared about his weirdness during the Killtaker sessions?
No, actually, I'll tell you the story quickly about that. We had been working on the songs that ended up on Killtaker, and we've been writing for a while. We had a tendency to just write and play the songs, and it wasn't like we were going to make a record and go put it out and then go tour to support the record. And in fact, Fugazi just rejects that idea, period. Like the idea that human beings would get into a van and then this whole machine all these people would work and they'd go out and play these shows and all in the service of selling plastic, that's backwards. The plastic, the records, or now the streams, they're in service of the tour, not the other way around. But the industry has things they have it all fucked up, right? The industry wants everyone to think that the point is what you're selling. But our point is what we used to say, the record is the menu and the show is the meal. That was our concept. So we would just play songs and then develop them. And then in the summer of '92, we did some recording and things were sounding pretty good, but then we were kind of flattening out by the fall. We were getting frustrated. We were kind of stuck. And I said, hey, why don't we go up to Chicago? Steve has offered to record us for free anytime we want. And I said, let's go up there and just record 2 songs. So everyone's like, yeah, why not? We'll just take a drive. We'll go to Chicago. We'll hang out. We'll see Corey at Touch and Go. We'll see our friends out there. Record with Steve. We'd never recorded with Steve before. We weren't really thinking. We just thought it'd be like a demo. So we go up there, and he was still recording in his house at the time. And we set up, and we started tracking, and it just sounded great. And we're like, fuck it, let's record the whole record. So we recorded the entire record and mixed it in 2 days. It was like 13 songs or 12 songs. But we were thinking, oh, this is the greatest record of all time. And Steve was an angel. We had a really nice time with him. He's He's a really sweet guy who, unfortunately, he's like one of those guys. I think Steve made a face, like a curmudgeon's face, and it stuck for many, many fucking years. But he was a very smart, very charismatic guy who really gave a damn, but he got a little tripped up on his own bullshit. And, but I remember we left the studio, we couldn't have been happier. And Joe and I were driving in a minivan, and Brendan and Dee were driving in a car. And we had all the gear in the minivan, so we were driving back across the Ohio Turnpike, which is a long drive. And I said to Joe, I think we left at 10 p.m. So we're going to be driving all night. It's a 10 or 12 hour drive. So I said, you ready to hear this? And he's like, let's give it a spin. So we put the cassette in, and we heard like a song, like maybe not yet, maybe too soon. And then we tried again in Pennsylvania, and we're like, it's not sounding very good. So the next day I called over to Brendan Gee's house, and I said, hey, how was your drive? And he goes, it was good. I go, everything's cool? You got in, you get some sleep? Yeah. And finally we're like, so did you guys listen? And did you, and they said, did you listen? And finally we all acknowledged that it just didn't sound good. It didn't sound right to us. And then Albini also said, yeah, it just doesn't sound right. But there was no negativity. It was, in many ways, one of the best sessions we ever did. But so it goes.
Right. Thanks, dude.
Sure.
Ian, I'm gonna pop in real quick while we're on that subject of Inama Killtaker. Is there any plans for Discord to officially release that so we're not all listening to it on YouTube?
I don't know.
There you go, that's an answer.
Hi, Ian, how are you?
Good.
You touched on it a little bit earlier. Sorry, cell phone guy fucked up and asked my question. But you mentioned it earlier about having a pretty healthy distrust for the big business of music. Given that, though, you're seeing a lot of hardcore bands self-govern. So you see a lot of great festivals like Outbreak, LDB, even for the children this weekend, smaller obviously, but these are all kind of, they're very DIY. Is there anything about that excites you enough to maybe come back in that kind of environment where it's less about big business and more about participating and really kind of spearheading that community that you guys were a big part of from the very beginning?
Let me think about your question. Well, first of all, I should be underscored. Distrust is there is an aspect of distrust, but mostly it just doesn't feel right to me. It's just not how I've ever operated. So I would feel uncomfortable dealing with, like, when you talk about the music industry stuff, I just can't relate to it because I'm so interested in people. Like, you can ask the people who organized this screening, you can talk to Jordan and ask him who he talked to about arranging this, and he'll tell you it was me. Like, I don't have a publicist, I don't have a manager, I don't have a lawyer. I'm coming from a different place, and so I think that part it's not really a matter of distrust. It's just rather it just doesn't make sense to me. It's not where I want to be. It's not how I want to do things. I'm not mad at other people for doing that. I have to tell you, people think me as a fundamentalist kind of guy, but I'm not that fundamentalist. I'm not intolerant, and I don't really. People, it's your lives. You all figure this shit out. That's the point that I've always tried to make. So in terms of your question, I don't know enough about those festivals. One of the peculiar situations I've run into is that, like, for instance, like a house show here in town. Let's say there's some young band are playing in a house show, and those gigs sound like a blast. Like, they're, kids are having a good time, and everyone's in on this. If I go to those shows, it can be really distracting for everybody. Because suddenly I'm like that dude, and I'm there. I'm also, I'm 62, and I think that it really it just freaks people out if I'm there. So in some ways, I feel like, just let them do their fucking thing. I love seeing kids' bands play because other kids are just going off, But if I get up there in the front of the stage, I think it would make them very uncomfortable. In terms of playing the smaller festivals, I just don't know enough about them. And also, I just didn't really play that many festivals because I think that Fugazi was always, we had so many things, we really curated our gigs, so festivals didn't make any sense to us. Sure. And actually, on that note, I should say that festivals are, this is not specific to the festivals you're talking about, but festival culture, the larger one, I think it has a real effect on music because the thing about festivals, when Fugazi played, or whenever I play, the mission is to win the night. So if you're playing, wherever you're playing, that night, you go in the room and you're gonna commit 100% to playing the show because you wanna win the fucking night, right? And I used to tell bands that were opening for us, occasionally some band, usually they'll be friends, but as they go on stage, I say, hey, have a great show. And they say, okay, thanks. I said, but hey, don't leave me an inch of stage. Because you leave me an inch of stage, no one's gonna remember you fucking played tonight. And they're like, God, what the fuck is that about? If I'm it's just encouraging people to not waste the opportunity to be on stage. If you're gonna be up there, get free, commit 100%. So I think that from our point of view, when we played, we always would play to the maximum. We would just try to win. Now festivals, by design, if you have 20 bands playing, it's just everyone, you just have to do your 45 minutes or your hour. You just have to be solid. But people rarely win the night because it's just a whole different mindset. So I think it's affected the way bands operate now because there's so much more money in festivals than playing tours, doing smaller gigs. And I think, and again, this is not specific to the smaller festival, this is the larger festival I'm talking about. They're completely run by the machinery. So the bands just have to show up, get on stage at the right time, the appointed time, do a solid 45 or 1 hour or whatever they've been allotted, and then get it out of the way for the next band. And that's fine if that's it's like going to it's like just going to a buffet or something. But when I go to eat, I don't want to just have to pick from a bunch of different things. I would like to go somewhere where the person cooking the food means it and is trying to make me well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hi, Ian, big fan.
Oh, well, hi.
So I've always been really inspired by Fugazi's commitment to their moral and ethical code. And I'm wondering if you have any advice to young people in bands who are trying to make their band their life, how to stay vigilant when the industry is always asking you to compromise your values.
Well, my first piece of advice is what I tell everybody about everything, which is this, is that if you want to do something, do it because you love it and love doing it. That way, if in a certain amount of time, whether it's a few months or a few years, and if perchance you haven't reached whatever level you think of as successful, you at least would spend your time doing something you loved, that's a good way to live. So many people strive for success and are miserable. And then when they don't reach that level of whatever success is to them, then they think, I just wasted my fucking time. So I feel like that's a pretty good way. Once you establish that you really genuinely love what you're doing, it's not that hard then to be vigilant about keeping your ethics, about how you feel comfortable. I think when people are unhappy, it's because they're going against their own principles. But if you're thinking more precisely about what you're comfortable with, and whether you're happy about something, or whether you love it, I think that kind of just follows suit immediately. Now, the other thing I was going to say is that, music for me, as I said earlier, it's like I'm interested in music made by people who don't have a choice in the matter. So I don't think of music as a career. People often say, like, well, it's easy for you to say because, you made your money, you made a living from your music. I made my fucking living from my work. And I work hard. I run a record label. I do all this stuff. I'm not playing music right now. I work. This is my job. I do it, but I do it so I can play music when, where, how, why, if I want to. That's the point. And I guess one would have to be prepared to to not actually get any attention at all. In the very beginning, people say, well, yeah, but now you're popular, so you have a little bit of leverage. I guess, but when I was in the Teen Idols, and when I was 18 years old, like we played this club, we got to the club, and the guy was like, your friends can't come in, they're under 18. In DC at the time, 18 was the drinking age for beer and wine. So we were told that our friends couldn't come in, and we're like, oh, then we're not fucking playing. So that was at a time where we couldn't have been more obscure, right? Another time when Fugazi was playing, we got to a venue, and this is very early in the band, maybe the first year, and I got there and I had negotiated, I talked to the booking guy, I booked it was going to be a $5 show. When I got there, it was $8 on the bar. I could see it written, Fugazi, $8. So I said to the guy at the club, I said, oh, we are loading in the gear. And I said, oh, that's wrong, it should be $5. He said, no, they're going to do $8. They decided to do $8. I said, well, we discussed it, and it's going to be $5. And he said, yeah, well, I talked to the guys, and it's going to be $8. I said, oh, all right. So I just turned around and I said to Brendan and Guy and Joe, I said, hey, let's pack the van up. Let's load out. And they're like, okay. So when we started loading out, the guy's like, wait, what are you doing? I said, we're playing a $5 show. And if this is an $8 show, we're not fucking playing. So you have to be prepared to walk. So you have to be able to stand behind the no. And that's really the way to do it. But, sometimes you find yourself in a situation where, you have to make it to, especially when you're in a band, you're not the only person. You got to think about what everyone feels. So it's okay, but just little by little. And also remember, the greatest success is the fact is that you're playing music at all. That's the gift.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for that answer.
Sure.
Ian, how's it going?
I'm well. How are you?
Mighty fine. You've been around the block for a hot minute now, and
Block that metaphor.
I'm just curious, like your perspective on, say, like the modern underground music scene, industry, business, whatever it is, compared to like when you started in the '80s. Like, are we on the right track, or has technology totally fucked us up, and it's much worse now than it was back in the day?
Well, first off, I already kind of commented a little bit about what I see as, of all the things that some of the punk scene, I'm not talking about all, like I can't possibly know everything that's going on in the underground. Let's take this back to 1981, right? Let's just pretend we're in 1981. And so Minor Threat, that was 40 years ago, right? So let's just say it's 1981, and I was in a band that was playing in 1941, right? Because I was in a band in 1981, so you're talking to me about stuff that's happening back in the big band era, and then you say, like, well, is there anything going on now? Do you think I would know about Minor Threat? No fucking way. I would know nothing about Minor Threat. It's because it's the reason it's called the underground, right? It's because it's underground. That's why it's called the underground. So I don't want to even for a second suggest that I know everything that's going on. I trust that people are always reaching for and discovering and finessing the new idea. The problem with technology is at the moment, I think our society, this is not specific to punk or underground music, but society for the last couple of decades has been stoned on technology. right? And at some point, people will really start, and I think it may come soon, people will start to realize that these things, these devices are tools. They're not like tablets to worship, they're tools to use. Like the microphone you're holding in your hand right now, right? You're not worshiping that fucking microphone, but when you speak into it, I can hear you and I'm on the other side of the country. But you see it as a tool. So the same way I think right now we're going through this process of, like, it's shocking what's going on. The fact that this is happening right now when you think about it, it's just insane.
Yeah.
That I'm sitting in my basement in Washington, D.C., and I'm talking to you all right now. So I'm not mad about that. It's kind of miraculous. At the same time, I feel like let me say it this way. Music is a form of communication that predates language. It's been around forever, and it was certainly around before the music industry was around, right? So music is no fucking joke. And it's the people, when it comes, this form of communication, when it comes, people are going to figure out how to navigate whatever the situation is. So I have to think that right now there are people who are thinking about music in a way that is so counterintuitive that most of us wouldn't recognize it being music. And that is fucking punk.
Hell yeah. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Nice to talk to you.
Ian, we have hit the 45-minute mark.
Do you guys want to do a couple more? How many more people are in line there?
We got 2, and yeah,
All right.
got a green light on that.
Is the theater okay with doing a few more minutes, or are we really at?
All right, we'll keep it going.
Hey there.
Hi.
I have a question about instrument. What was it like having this 10-year process documented on film at the time, and then also looking back now?
Jim Cohen, the director, he and I went to Wilson High School together here in Washington, D.C. I've known Jim since I was in 10th grade. And Jim would stay at Discord House regularly. He started shooting Super 8 footage when he was in college. So he would come stay at Discord because we were just friends, and he was regularly filming around the house. And he was actually working on a Discord House documentary. That was sort of the idea, I think. But it was he just collects footage. He's not thinking about it like, no, we have to get this shot. There's no storyboard. He's just filming things that he thinks are interesting. And this is right around the same time that Fugazi started playing, so Jim would come film us if we were practicing or whatever. And then when we started gigging, he started filming us. But Jim is like part of our family. So it wasn't really like we had a film crew with us. It was just Jim. At some point, he showed us, I think in the early 90s, he showed us some of the footage he had shot of us. It was black and white Super 8 footage. And it was beautiful. Jim is an exquisitely good filmmaker. He really keeps his stuff clean. He really takes care of his equipment. He's got a great composition. He's very steady with his work, his camera work. So we were really stunned by how beautiful the stuff looked, because one of the weird things about video is that video was kind of pornographic. Like you would play and you see a video of yourself playing, and it was just weird because it's not the way you remember it feeling. But when we saw Jim's Super 8 footage, and it was a little bit slowed down, so it was a little dreamy, that actually did kind of look the way we felt when we played. It was more for us. So then we thought, well, this is cool, but what can we do with this? It's silent Super 8. So then we thought, well, maybe we could do like 16 millimeter, like we'll do some live film stuff, and then we could use these Super 8 things to, as sort of smaller pieces. And then it occurred to us that we have all these recordings. We have hours and hours and hours of Fugazi stuff that we recorded on our own demo stuff. And then it just all started to come together. So it wasn't really it was just part of what we were doing. It wasn't like we were being, we were under siege with this film crew or anything like that. It was just, we were working on a project. We think of, I think we really thought of Fugazi as a visual record. I'm sorry, instrument as a visual record. We were just thinking about it as, like, this is, another record for us, but this one is visual. So that's how we approached it. So it was just another project. And in terms of I just don't really think about things like how things feel. People ask me, like, how does it feel? But I don't know. It feels like it exists. And I'm glad. I think it's a pretty interesting film. I will say this about most rock documentaries people see, or I've seen, is that and most documentaries, frankly, now have narrative arcs, right? Like and in fact, they're scripted in narrative arc, which is weird because, in my opinion, life doesn't have a narrative arc. That's to serve the time frame or the format. But like in this room, like your room right now, I don't know how many people were there. If it's 100 people, that's a lot of arcs, right? There's not one arc. There's a lot of arcs, and we're all doing different. We're all in our own thing. So when we made our movie, what I like about it is that there's no narrative arc. There's no scene where, like, things are going great for the band, and then it's like someone's got some drug problem, or oh no, like the manager stole some money, or whatever. Like they're so formulaic, and then always at the end, like the guys kind of the people in the band, like, I don't know, should we try to get the old thing going again? Or it's just, it feels so manipulative to me. I find it frustrating. If you watch documentaries, even like documentaries, early ones like, say, Gimme Shelter or Monterey Pop or those things, of course they're edited. So the editors have they can manipulate the storyline to some degree. But really, what you're seeing is just information that you can decide. You don't have a narrator telling you what's happening. Those filmmakers, I think, trust that the audiences can figure it out for themselves. And I like to think that Fugazi has always trusted that our audience can figure it out for themselves.
Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
One question that I was thinking of is, as somebody who I would consider sort of a boundary pusher, if maybe you could tell us a little bit about some unlikely or out-of-the-box things that have influenced you creatively, and if you have any advice for people who want to do a similar thing and pushing against their own boundaries.
Wow, can you give an example of which kind of boundary you're referring to?
I think musically, I would say that you pushed the boundaries of what was considered punk in the first place. Yeah, that's a big one.
No, I'm just wondering about I'm thinking of many boundaries. I'm just trying to think of it's true that for me, when I came across punk, like when I was a kid, first of all, I played music. I don't remember a time in my life where I didn't play music. I just started playing piano when I was very little. I could just organize sound. I wrote songs, but they're more like organized sound. And then I thought, I just wanted to play guitar, but I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand how piano turned into. I couldn't understand the relationship between the two instruments, and it was clearly the province of experts. Like it was sort of like like if you are throwing a football with your friends, and then you think like, I want to be an NFL player, but it's like two extremely different worlds. Like I couldn't even think about it because I was surrounded by just Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith and stuff like that, and it just seemed so out of reach. Also, I was growing up in Washington, D.C. There's no music industry to speak of that I was aware of here whatsoever. My parents were not musicians. I didn't know anybody. So it was just really it just seemed insane to even think about it. So instead I became a skateboarder. That's what I did. I became a skateboarder. And skateboarding for me was, I say this a lot, that it was not it wasn't a hobby or a sport. It was a fucking discipline. And it gave me something to do, every day just to go out into the world every night, every day, just go and skate. And I wasn't that good a skateboarder, but it didn't matter. But there was no competition for me. It was for me, the experience was looking at the world with a different set of eyes and then redefining the environment around me. Now, I was very frustrated with music at that point because I thought music was about change. It was about pushing society or pushing people towards making decisions that are going to be better for the world. That's how growing up with music, it was so connected to civil rights and the anti-war movement and the women's lib movement and gay rights. It was so connected to all that stuff that's what I really thought music was supposed to do. But by the 70s, music was largely about getting high or getting laid or getting rich. And that was it. A lot of getting, right? Not a lot of giving. So I felt at that time like I had given up on it. But then my friends, Jim Cohn being one of them, started getting into punk/new wave, and we would argue about it. Guys said, "Oh, it sucked," but I didn't really know because I never really studied. And then when I finally did study, I was like, and finally the penny kind of dropped, and then I saw the Cramps. And when I saw the Cramps, it was just mind blowing because what I realized is that what I was really seeing was this. It was like a bat signal in the sky, and it said self-defined, like you decide what you're going to be. And so then we said, let's form a band. And from that point on, I wasn't thinking like what are the boundaries? I didn't care about boundaries. I'm just going to work on what's in front of me. And people were saying like, well, you seem to be moving your musical styles. I don't think about it at all like that. I'm just playing the music that's coming out of me at the time that it comes out of me. It's really responding. I'm not thinking about genre because my genre, as I said, is music made by people who don't have a choice in the matter, right? So I think boundaries tend to fall that way. Now, to answer your question, yeah, I think when I listen, there's a lot of music I've heard where I think, wow, how did they come up with that idea? Or where did that come from? And I can't give you an exact example right now. I remember, I've been to restaurants where, the way they serve, like, I'll tell you, there's one place we went to, it was in Little Rock, Arkansas, and it was an Indian place, Indian food, and you go and you sit down, and there's only one guy that worked there. He comes out, and he brings you these plates, and it has like your dinner and your dessert all on the plate, and he just puts it in front of you. There's no menu. It just comes. You don't order. It just comes to you. You sit down. You eat. If you want more, he'll give you more. If you don't, but he says you just don't leave any food on the plate. And then when you leave, there's just a basket, and you leave however much money you want to go in, how much you want to put in there. And this guy, it was his mission, and I thought, that is really inspiring. Seeing somebody, and for years he was doing it, and it was a really, I found it deeply inspiring because it was wrenching away from the industry, the idea of what food is, because he was serving people, and that seems to be, for me, is a much more compelling reason to do anything. Money is fucking boring. People, that's where it's at.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much.
I want to just say, can everybody hear me still?
Yeah, we didn't cut you off yet.
I just want to say, it is 11 something here, 11:40 or whatever, and I'm sorry that I couldn't speak to you after the film. I would have been curious to hear if you had any questions, what those questions would have been. But I do appreciate you all, if you came out early for this, I certainly appreciate you all letting me coming on the front side of it, and I hope you do enjoy the film. Actually, let me go give me 1 second, I'm going to grab something, because I realize I have it here. There's my guitar. So see, you can find that in the film. You can find it, look for the Fugazi on the back.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I still play this joint. It's my jam. It's my guitar.
Well, Ian, I just want to thank you for your time tonight. Everyone here appreciates it, and most importantly, appreciates your work all these years. We know that's important to you, and it's why we're here. So thank you again, and
I'll see you all around the way.
all right.
Hey, take care. Bye.